Hi everyone, welcome to this very quick video about trading macro. We're speaking here on the afternoon about 5 o'clock on Tuesday, January the 27th. What I want to do here just for a couple of minutes is really just show you guys, especially the more less advanced traders, how you can trade the macro headlines quickly to make some quicker intraday profits. So let's just first of all start and see what just happened about a half hour ago or so. We had a bunch of tweets, essentially from Donald Trump. Concerning the US dollar, so we had Trump, dollar is doing great. Okay, that seems to be positive. But then he went on to say the dollar is seeking its own level, which is fair. Okay. Also, he said, again, just a series of quotes here, Trump doesn't think dollar declined too much. And basically, Trump isn't concerned about the decline in the dollar. So what is that telling us? Let's just go back to the charts because if we go back and have a look at, for example, the USD versus the JPY, the Japanese yen, let's have a quick look at that. And what we can see is that there was some sort of a concern or interest starting last Friday that not only the Bank of Japan and the Ministry of Finance of Japan, but in a consultation and together with the New York Federal Reserve, so with the approval, the tacit approval probably of the US Treasury Secretary, decided to potentially to intervene to do what they call a rate check, which is just to check the levels of the US dollar against various currencies, in this case the Japanese yen. So essentially giving this idea, which we haven't seen for many, many years, since about 2011, that the US government is prepared, or the US Treasury is prepared to intervene potentially in the FX market, potentially to weaken the US dollar, which is obviously a big deal. Now, we had that on Friday. There wasn't any confirmation or denial from the US Treasury. There wasn't any confirmation or denial from the Japanese authorities, so the Ministry of Finance or the Bank of Japan. But as you can see, the dollar continued to weaken yesterday. So we got this here yesterday, and here we are on Tuesday afternoon, another big down day. So the thing is here, if we look at the dollar index, we can also see just a huge sort of fall. And if we can put this on the 3-minute chart, I just want to show you that if you know this context, that the market is really concerned that the US Treasury, and obviously with the authorization of Trump, is potentially okay with a weaker US dollar to benefit their sort of trading position. So obviously US exports would be cheaper and therefore more competitive. But there was no official confirmation of that. So the market was sort of swimming around, with a lot of rumors and conspiracy theories and whatnot. So the fact that Trump came out now and basically gave his blessing for a weaker dollar with these tweets and essentially saying, hey, he is okay with the weaker dollar. He doesn't think it's an inappropriate level. That is essentially some kind of official confirmation that potentially this is official policy of the US administration under Trump, that they are, sort of tacitly accepting a weaker US dollar. So what's the trade there? You hear a context, sort of a tweet like that. And again, keep in context, people are starting to talk about the 1985 Plaza Accords, where there was a concerted sort of international coordination to weaken what was considered a too strong US dollar. So people are starting to throw around this phrase, the Plaza Accords. So just to say, if you hear something like that, if you know the macro environment, this is an easy way just to get on this trade. So how can you do it? If you have dollar futures, you can short those, of course, but you can do it on spot FX or futures. Obviously, we saw here the euro ripping high against the US dollar. You can see the US dollar weakening against all of the currency. So here we have, choose a strong one on the other side, like the CHF, like the Swiss franc, even something like the Canadian dollar benefited. And, the Aussie dollar, as we know, has been really strong and just pushing up to what I mentioned in my video this morning, above 70. But there also are implications for other sort of asset classes. So, of course, the big one is going to be gold. And we know all the macro factors why gold is being supported at the moment. But if the US president is essentially coming out and saying, hey, I don't mind a weaker dollar, that's going to be good because gold's going to be cheaper just to buy an ounce of gold. But essentially, it's almost like this debasement idea, this debasement theory of the US dollar. And Trump's coming out, as we say, just going back to those tweets, he's okay with it. It's not an inappropriate level. He said it's a yo-yo which goes up and down. So another great trade, hearing those tweets, is immediately bang out along. You see here about the 3 p.m. on either the gold futures or the GLD. You can see the GLD ETF. If you just want to go long the stock here, or you could buy a long calls or long call spreads, and you can see that already just on the GLD up about about 1.5%, 150 basis points or so. We can also see in silver, not as dramatic and a little bit more volatile and more expensive, obviously, but that's also asset classes which are going to be there. Now, the other issue as well, interesting to see just quickly, if there's any reaction on the equities. You can see here, on the other hand, the equities not quite as excited about that. And of course, there's other things, earnings and everything going on. So just look across the different sort of asset classes. But just keep in mind that what is going to be interesting is that if we do have a weaker dollar policy, we have to watch tomorrow if there's going to be a bit more follow through. We obviously have an FOMC. We have a Fed meeting tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. Will Jerome Powell come out and be a little bit hawkish about that? Will he talk about the weaker dollar? That's going to be an interesting sort of thing to keep in mind. But just keep in mind, let's see if there's any sort of pushback here from U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent. Maybe he's going to come out and go, "Oh my God, Trump's just said something which is not actually our policy." So again, this could be an opportunity. Remember what I said about trading tweets in the past, that some of the best opportunities are also reversals or denials. So now we've seen the US dollar weakening. If, for example, in the next day or two or three, we get Trump himself coming out and say, no, the market misinterpreted that, or maybe the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent will come out and say, no, absolutely, our policy is for a strong dollar. The president misspoke, or the president said that in a slightly strange context. There could be an opportunity, especially if we get strong economic data, and especially if we get a relatively hawkish Federal Reserve meeting tomorrow afternoon, that could push up. Okay, I'll leave it there, guys. By the way, I will be doing an FOMC Fed preview probably mid-morning tomorrow. That's on Wednesday. Hope that's useful. And as I say, this is just an opportunity to quickly learn how you can make quick intraday trades, make some money on Trump tweets and other sort of macro headlines. Thanks. Hope that was useful, and we'll keep on talking.